Sustainability Fellow at the University of British Columbia. So give us a wave up there as we introduce you. And we have Naoko Ellis, who is the Professor and Associate Dean of the Clean Energy Research Center at the University of British Columbia. Thank you for joining us. And then in person, we have Eric Meliton, who's the Manager of the Sustainability Office at Laurier. We collaborate on a lot of projects together. We have Ceileigh McAllister, who's one of the co-chairs of the Sustainability Literacy Initiative here at Waterloo and one of the fantastic organizers for today's conference. And she's an undergraduate student in the School of Environment, Resources and Sustainability. And last but not least, Jenna is a past commissioner for the WUSA Sustainability Project here on campus, and currently a student at the Balsillie School of International Affairs, where she's doing her master's program, and also a former co-op student of the Sustainability Office here on campus. So really pleased to have all of you here today, virtual and in person. And so, yeah, we can get some of the conversation started. And I think it was interesting this morning, one of the little breakouts that we had activities outside was asking when either currently or when we were, for people who have already graduated in school, have you had exposure to sustainability throughout your time? And it was funny because Eric and I were on one end of the spectrum where I guess, you know, even 10 years ago, this was a very different conversation. And so maybe to start the conversation from the panel, I'll just pose a sort of question to, you know, share a little bit about yourself and the work that you do that's helped in this journey of embedding sustainability in the curriculum. And so I think I'll try to alternate between online and in person, just to kind of keep things back and forth. But I'm going to go in the order that you appear on the screen from my side. So Derek, I'll put you on the spot first, and maybe you can share a few words with us.
Yeah, sure. Hello, everyone. It's great to be here virtually from the West Coast here. And we do want to acknowledge that we are on the unceded and the ancestral and traditional territories of the Musqueam peoples on UBC campus. And we're really, thrilled to be a part of this conversation. I'm in the Faculty of Education. I'm an environmental sustainability educator. I look at this work typically through more of an arts-based or sociocultural lens, less from the STEM, although there is some of that too. And I particularly look at things like energy literacy and how energy systems, and we discuss those in society and how those kinds of particular systems are really important to larger issues around climate or sustainability or environmental literacies. One of the endeavors that I've been looking at over the few years is to try and embed a more mandated environmental literacy curriculum in the Bachelor of Education program for teacher candidates. So teachers spending their 11 months training to then go out into BC or wherever else they go and educate students at various K through 12 levels. And really sort of making that kind of a core course where everyone has to have some element, some exposure to that kind of curriculum so they can embed that in whatever they do, whether they're teaching maths or English or socials or whatever it is, that there's some kind of core basic understanding of this. So that's kind of what I do, I guess, as an individual in my unit, but then also I work with my partner here, Naoko, Ellis, in a larger initiative at UBC on transdisciplinary graduate education focused on climate emergency. And that's kind of, we're running a pilot this year of 9 PhD students who are really trying to work outside of the kind of normative university system and doing transdisciplinary work with the idea that doing climate work or environmental sustainability, however we want to just define that, really demands sort of complex forms of education that institutions sometimes struggle to provide. So trying to create a much more transdisciplinary model around that. Maybe I'll pass it over to Naoko here.
Sure, thank you, Derek. My name is Naoko Ellis, and I'm a professor in chemical and biological engineering. But first off, I'm an alma mater of Waterloo, and super excited to be able to join you here today. I've been teaching in the Department of Chemical Engineering and thinking deeply about engineering education and sustainability. And what has really helped me over the years is perhaps opportunities as faculty to join other disciplinary folks. And I think you and I were not at the same time, but our UBC has University Sustainability Initiative, and every year they have sustainability faculty fellows that are supported. So we do get a course buyout to be able to join conversations across campus around sustainability. And that has really helped me carve out some time to embed different areas of sustainability in my teaching.
Thank you very much to both of you. Now go in reverse order on this side so I can kind of keep track here, but Jenna, why don't you share a little bit on that?
Sure, thank you, Matt. So hi, everyone. My name is Jenna. My pronouns are she, her. I just graduated from the School of Environment Resources and Sustainability. And as Matt mentioned, I'm now at the Ceileigh School of International Affairs doing my master's in global governance. And I've worn a lot of different hats. They all relate to working directly with students to enhance their sustainability literacy. So as Matt mentioned, again, I was a co-op student. I worked for 3 terms of the Sustainability Office, where I was supporting different education programs for the different faculties and students at our campus, including green residents. I worked, most recently, I'm actually working right now for Evergreen Canada, which is a national nonprofit. And I'm a project coordinator for their Future City Builders program, which is equipping youth in the Kitchener-Waterloo area with the knowledge, the literacy, and the resources to address healthy city challenges here in the community. I was the executive director for Youth Action on Climate Change, which was another local nonprofit that was equipping youth with the leadership skills and the resources like funding to implement change in their communities. And then I also run a sustainability podcast that is showing youth what the challenges are in our world, making it relevant to them, showing them how they can take action, and then leaving them with tangible information that they can use to then actually go out into their communities to take action. And I was the sustainability commissioner for the university, so getting to work directly with people like yourselves here at the University of Waterloo to figure out any type of projects they were interested in implementing to promote sustainability, connecting them with the relevant people on campus. So it's really been a people forward position, all these positions. And it's given me the opportunity to listen directly to young people like yourselves, what you are interested in implementing, and giving you the resources and the confidence to actually go out in the world and create change.
Fantastic, thank you. Switching back to online, Keroles, maybe you could share a little bit there.
Sorry, hi. So my name is Keroles Riad. Most people call me Keroles, feel free to call me that. And I am a postdoctoral fellow right now at Carleton University, and I spent 13 years at Concordia, did my undergrad there, my master's and my doctorate at Concordia University of Montreal. And one of the projects that I got involved with is called Waste Not One Not, which started as a student group in 2016 with the goal of helping the 57 member community at Concordia learn about how to sort and reduce and compost their waste. And actually, since we started, and composting at Concordia has doubled, and annual overall waste has decreased by 16% per person. It's about 2 months worth of garbage that disappears per person every year. So that. One of the main advocacy points that we work on, as well as sustainability curriculum, and last year I led a referendum campaign where we essentially had the Concordia Student Union add a question to their by-election, where the students were asked if they would call on the university to make an institutional commitment to teaching all students at Concordia about sustainability and the climate crisis within their curriculum by 2030. And that by-election had the highest turnout in the student history, which over 20% of the students participated. And 89% said yes, demanding that the university includes sustainability in their curriculum. And a little bit of stats here, only 19% of the students at Concordia actually learn anything about sustainability in their curriculum. The national average in Canada is 37%. So we're still a lot of work to go there for us, and even 37% is fairly low. The goal is to have everybody learn, because at the end of the day, Sustainability has three major spheres: environment, social, and economic, and it overlaps with every discipline. And addressing and advancing sustainability causes requires everybody to act, each within their own profession. So this is a very important issue, and I really appreciate all the work being done to organize this summit, and looking forward to the conversation.
Wonderful, thank you. Ceileigh, let me hear from you.
Yes, I'm just gonna take my mask off so everyone can hear me. Everyone here, with the exception of George, who is new now, George is here. Everyone has already heard me talk a lot today. So Ceileigh, co-chair of the Sustainability Literacy Initiative, and I'm a student in SURS. Emma and I got started on the sustainability literacy work about a year ago through an avenue that we call the Sustainability Literacy Requirement, or the SLR. We were really inspired when we first picked this up last September. We had a call with Keroles almost immediately, I think late September, early October. And we were really inspired by the work that was happening at Concordia. The fact that the student union mandated sustainability education for every student at that university by 2030 gave Emma a lot of hope that we could see that here as well. The sustainability literacy requirement would be similar to a communications requirement. So we already discussed this a little bit this morning, and I am by no means a curriculum expert. So don't be taking this as like for the technical information, but I know the broad strokes. Every student needs to take at least one, Cameron gets to take 2 courses on communication as part of their degree and part of their curriculum. And Emma and I think that sustainability is also super important, and a similar model should be implemented for sustainability education. What we would suggest, Matt's office is already done a really great job, and they have compiled a whole list of all the different courses we have related to environmental sustainability for our STARS score. And we would suggest that this list of courses be put on the course calendar, and every student, undergraduate student at the University of Waterloo, should have to take one of those courses in order to graduate. We suggest this for a couple different reasons. Number one, it gives different programs flexibility. So in like in engineering, for instance, there might not be that flexibility where the engineers can choose the course. The faculty or the program might decide this is the best course for them to take. But in a field that's more open, like arts, if you're in arts and business, or if you're in political science, there might be a variety of different courses you could choose to take, and giving students more options would be beneficial. The other reason why we think that the list format is the best way to go about implementing this is because it allows students to really specialize and learn what's going to help them. Emma and I don't think that the right solution is everyone taking Introduction to Environmental Studies. That would be a good start, but everyone learning the basics of like resource use and climate change, that's not going to help us. As someone who wants to become a lawyer, maybe you should be taking Environmental Studies 201, which is Introduction to Environmental Law. As an engineer, maybe the engineer should all be taking Engineering for Sustainable Development, which I think is like Environmental Engineering 230 or something. I think that it's very important that people are given the specific tools for their discipline to allow them to further the work that they're doing, because general education is super important, but also having the skills that you need to embed sustainability into your discipline and into your professional life is something that needs to happen at the post-secondary level.
Wonderful, thank you. Switching online again, Jaydn, how about you?
Hello, my name is Jaydn Cowie. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm originally from the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh territory, but I'm currently on Mi'kmaq territory. I go to school at Dalhousie in my 4th year studying environment, society, and sustainability, social anthropology, and I'm doing a certificate in Indigenous studies, which is a really long term. But yeah, for the past year or so, I've been working for the College of Sustainability alongside the Office of Sustainability at Dalhousie. And honestly, I'm pretty much a year behind Ceileigh and Keroles. We've been just starting the process of creating an issues policy for the student union at Dalhousie, essentially an issues policy on climate change in the curriculum. And we're going to bring that to the president's office once it's done and essentially say, hey, all the students at Dalhousie are demanding this. This needs to be done. But yeah, so while working for the College of Sustainability, I was helping refresh the school sustainability policies and create an institution-wide framework. And I'm also in the process of creating sort of a baseline course our introductory course for all students, for all undergraduate students at Dalhousie. Although this is very much not the solution, it's sort of a band-aid for the time being, while faculty is working on implementing sustainability into the curriculum. And we're also planning an institution-wide academic symposium for, I believe, November. Essentially, it's for professors, faculty, and students to get together to talk about what students are demanding in curriculum and what faculty's hesitations and difficulties are with implementing that into their own curriculum, because obviously a lot of faculty have done a lot of work to create their own curriculum and exactly what they want to teach. And so, yeah, basically that's what I've been doing now.
Wonderful, thank you, Jaydn. And Eric, I'll turn it over to you as well.
Great. I'm gonna take Kayleigh's cue and take off my mask so people can hear, but Matt was actually very gracious to say it was 10 years. For me, it was actually 20 years ago when I graduated. And to some extent, I predate sustainability as a terminology. I was kind of entering in from a chemistry and environmental science background, got into the mining and pharmaceutical manufacturing and clean tech. But clean tech back then was called environmental technologies. Corporate social responsibility was what we were doing. And the literacy side of it is actually kind of important as to why I've transitioned now from the public sector, which is where I came from, working with the private sector as an advocate for water and waste management, but wanting to get to kind of the core of where people professionally are going to come from, which is the students, people in universities, people in colleges, our peers in our networks of sustainability professionals and other schools. I was brought in to help with building external partnerships for our sustainability office and program. In reality, the thing that I actually realized after a year and a half now is the thing that I need to help strengthen as a team is integrated internal partnerships, leadership opportunities, experiential opportunities for students. I'd like to tell people about our Sustainable Hawk Fund, which is a bursary program for students, staff, and faculty to get $5,000 bursaries to lead initiatives that they can leave as a legacy. We have a lot of initiatives that are very similar to Matt's program. We have a lot of kind of side-by-side, shoulder-to-shoulder type of initiatives that we try to do together. And for what it's worth, industry mentorship, collaboration, these are things that you can get access to that can enhance your literacy that isn't through the academic programs. I always try to mentor students. I've mentored over 200 young professionals to find new jobs. I say yes to these inquiries and read these requests because a lot of times students don't have that access to people before they get into the industry. And then they almost feel like it's almost too late. You know, it's like 4 years, 5 years, they've done multiple schooling. Now what? I'm in the workplace now. I don't know where to go. When I hear that conversation now after 10 years of mentoring, it scares me to think that during their whole time at school, they didn't have access to that. So I give that back. So what made it easier for me to take this job at Laurier was like, I don't have to seek that out anymore. I'm sitting right here in our building. People can come and find us. And there's an opportunity for them to have that opportunity to talk to me about my 20 years in the industry as it's evolved on its arc. The arc is still changing. It's evolving now. I'm kind of envious as a practitioner who doesn't have an education in what you're getting. But at the same time, I want to give back from a practitioner's experience what it's really like out there. Because once you start to get in there, it's completely different from what you're learning in school. And I'm kind of seeing that firsthand by being in front of students every day. Thanks.
Fantastic. Yeah, I think it's really that arc of growth in sustainability connections in industry across government and other places. It's actually more of like an exponential curve that we're starting to see right now, where this is taking off and a lot of companies under pressure and needing to show some real progress on a number of different sustainability metrics. Just reflecting a little bit on the response there, it was great to hear a few different thoughts on, you know, there's the core curriculum, what we learn about in courses, but a few of you also brought up the sort of stuff that happens around the campus, not exclusively in the classroom. And so the learning opportunities you have through student groups and societies, sort of the co-curricular type work, sustainable living opportunities while you're here on campus. And then, like you said, Eric, some of the partnerships and sort of connections with industry that can be facilitated through the campus, even if it's not part of, you know, what you're learning in Sustainability 101 or whatever courses you're taking. So thank you all for your reflections on that. I'll come back and you've already touched on it a little bit, but the question is like, why is sustainability so important to happen for a post-secondary institution, and how is that, you know, driving some of what you're doing? why is that sustainability literacy piece so important? And so I'll switch up the order here, and maybe I'll start maybe with Keroles. You can take the first stab at this one.
Oh boy. Well, okay. So there's a couple of different things here when it comes to education in general. So there are different levels. There's obviously post-secondary and there's the younger ages. And I think sustainability has to be included throughout all stages of education for different purposes. So at a younger age, it's important to have this general understanding and general appreciation of sustainability issues, whether environmental, social, or economic. So this is where, you know, having some form of one course, kind of one size fits all kind of course on sustainability, just to give you a general appreciation at the younger ages is helpful at high schools or early on. Now at the university, when we all sort of branch out to different disciplines and different professions, we also need to realize that every discipline, everybody has a different role. So being a lawyer has a different role than being a business leader, and being a teacher, and being an engineer. We all have to contribute to advancing sustainability in different ways. And part of our education and professional training has to be how we can contribute each within our own profession to advancing these issues. How do we get this form of training in there? And to the point that was made earlier about campus life, I think COVID kind of really made us appreciate the importance of campus life, and, you know, having not being able to go to campus for a long while, really brought to focus how important it is to engage in a community, being part of a community that's on campus, and all the student groups and all the activities. But it also brought to focus the importance of the academic mission of a university, because when everything else shut down, we were still going to courses online as well. And so this formal trainings that happens in curriculum is an integral part of what the university does. And so when everything else goes wrong, you still have the curriculum, right? So this is really important to me, I think, for at the university levels, that each discipline thinks about how that profession can contribute to solutions. At the end of the day, when we think about also eco-anxiety, people feel helpless when they don't know how to help. And fundamentally, that's the job of universities, to be able to equip students and professionals with the tools that they need to contribute, so that they're actually able to help. And this is how I think the role that universities can play to counteract the eco-anxiety, just giving people the tool to contribute and be able to advance this mission. That's what I have to say.
Perfect, thank you. And maybe I'll stay online for a second and switch to Derek and to Naoko. And, you know, from an educator perspective, the person that's actually doing the teaching and integrating it into curriculum, what are your thoughts on, again, the why is this so important?
Yeah, well, it's a huge question, you know, a great question, and we'll maybe just follow up on what was just said really quite articulately, and that is that I think, you know, in some ways, you know, the environmental crisis is a crisis of perception, and it's how we develop certain kinds of knowledge systems, and how we think about and feel and experience, you know, the affective, the relational, the cognitive, how these things come together as we are being educated. And we are in certain kinds of, you know, educational systems that are structured in certain kinds of ways. And one of the big important aspects of doing this work is really thinking transdisciplinarily or interdisciplinarily, and how this is something that you know, as was just said, every discipline has a contribution to this, and even more so, every discipline starts to come together and meld together in terms of looking at this in a complex way. And universities are still very much divided into a disciplinary structure. So one of the questions we ask ourselves, and the work we try to do, is how do we really try to push the dial where we're moving beyond disciplines, and we're really trying to find ways to educate where we do have a significant cross-pollination of how we do quote unquote do disciplines, but even more so how, like in transdisciplinarity, how we create new knowledges out of the disciplines actually coming together and melding in a way where the separation is very unclear at this point. And obviously this is a big issue. It's challenging in terms of the size of institutions and how they move, but this also changes the way we think, and it changes the way that we imagine or perceive what is happening around us in different ways. And
Yeah, I guess from the we talk about the T-shaped engineering, and it's not necessarily applicable only to engineering education, but the depth or the vertical line is the depth of your discipline, and the overarching horizontal line being more of being able to have the wide kind of experience. And when the other Derek was talking about experiential and connection to, and really knowing certain fields or disciplinary fields as students in context of everything that is going on, that's where I think importance can really start to shine. Speaking to a colleague of mine who is in a consulting firm here, and really sort of speaking volume about what kind of graduates he would look for in these days. And the technical or the disciplinary knowledge is a given, but do they have that kind of the horizontal, you know, the T shape, being able to know and be able to talk relationally, be able to see things in broader systems. And so those are all things that perhaps not just transdisciplinary, but really understanding the discipline and the beyond disciplinary focus may help.
Wonderful, thank you. Maybe picking up on that point then, Eric, you know, your 20 years, as you mentioned, experience in industry. Why do we think it's important? You know, have you seen that drive and that need for that literacy coming out of students at the post-secondary level?
Yeah, I'm going to answer that question combination from an anecdotal perspective and from what I think our program is going to evolve into. Our program's been around for 13 years, and I think Matt and I have exchanged notes that we've struggled over the years in trying to engage students and staff and faculty on these types of literacy opportunities. When I had pitched to interview for this position, I had positioned, you know, an integrated strategy, you know, building upon the pillars that we have as an institution: alumni, student associations, athletics, and the staff and faculty. But one of the biggest things that was missing was how, you know, and they really wanted to understand how I had thought of that. I said, I need to get down to this level. If we're not doing it at this level, we're not understanding what really is the demand or the need from the students, because we're in our offices, we're working on policy, we're working on implementation strategies, we're working on budget shortfalls, capital implementation opportunities, everything else. People forget the ultimate relationship to maintain here is with the students. And the students circle through here in a cyclical fashion, 2 to 4 years. It's the window of time. So I pitched an opportunity for us to bridge the alumni coming back and giving back to the sustainability programs, because they missed out if they graduated 20 years ago like myself, or if they've just started to learn about sustainability in their 3rd year or their 4th year. When they now start to realize this is where my career path is, there's a window that this is a nice opportunity for us to build that literacy, build that engagement, build that collaboration that we can establish. And the industry piece to it, which is where I came from. When I worked at the Toronto Region Conservation Authority, I was their corporate guy. They would send me into the boardrooms. You know, we need to deal with these multinationals. We have to ask them for money. We have to fine them for any regulatory or Conservation Act kind of sanctions. And part of that was to build currency with them. And what I see is an opportunity here is if we start this in K-12, or we start this in high school, or in the university college landscape, by the time they get into those boardrooms, these conversations don't come off as I have 2 heads. You know, what is this guy doing here? It's more, I know about this. We heard this morning, people don't have a knowledge in sustainability that they can feel comfortable with in Canada. I think it was like 50%. That's not surprising to me with all these boardroom conversations I've had. And this wasn't 20 years ago conversations. This is like in the last 3 to 4 years. So all of this is in the news, all of this is impactful. ESG, SDG, TFSD, these are all buzz terms to the corporate sector until it actually becomes something important to them. My goal is to make that important to them. In this case, now it's to actually influence the students to kind of be ready for those conversations, even though I'm not a faculty member, right? And so this is my access point to the young professionals of the future.
Amazing, thanks. That cues us up perfectly. We have 3 students on the panel, so I wanted to leave the sort of final word on this point for you, 3 of you, and you know why sustainability literacy is so important from the student perspective. And maybe whoever wants to go first, you can put your hand up, and I'll on you. Any thoughts? Okay, Jenna, I saw you, and then Jaydn, and then Ceileigh. I'll give you the last word.
Well, I mean, it's our future, first of all. We are going into the world and we're the next generation of change makers, the current generation of change makers. And we're seeing a lot of unfortunate things happening as a result of actions that happened decades in the past. And so it's really about what we do today and what we do moving forward. So sustainability is central to preserving any sort of high quality of life. And so whatever discipline you are going into, as others on the panel were saying, you are going into engineering. If you want to be some sort of scientist, if you want to be a politician, every decision we make in the future needs to be thinking about sustainability and thinking generations down the road. And so we need to be thinking about sustainability in our education now, so we are equipped to go out into that world and recognize the connections that politics or building design have to sustainability and what that would mean for our futures. So if there is one sort of sentence that I have to express why we should care as students, it's because it is our future.
Fantastic. Jaydn.
Yeah, very similarly to what Jenna just said, it is our future and it's our only planet, as we all know. And obviously sustainable literacy is so important as young people we're beginning our careers, following interests and like adapting to society's demands in both social aspects and industry workforce aspects. And as it was mentioned many times before, industry is changing. And even now, like when I'm applying for jobs, most jobs do ask for some sort of sustainability literacy. Thankfully, I have it because I chose to study sustainability. And I feel really lucky that I chose that because I have that over other students, but it also doesn't feel fair that only because I decided to study sustainability do I have this leg up. And I also have some like some of my peers sort of say, yeah, like I want to learn about sustainability, but I just feel so far behind. Like it's almost like they're embarrassed because they are like my age, I don't know, mid-20s, young 20s, and don't have any understanding of sustainability, but that's not their fault. It's because it hasn't been taught to them, right? And so I think that if it were to be implemented into, as we were saying, it's related to all disciplines, it's completely interconnected. If it were to be implemented into all curriculum, there wouldn't be this issue of students feeling like they're already too far behind, just as they're starting to follow their interests and their passions and like, get into the workforce. So yeah, basically to just like have like a baseline of sustainability feels like it would start everybody off with the same foot.
Amazing. Ceileigh.
When Emma and I started doing this, I used to say that sustainability was like sex ed. And that everyone needs to do sex ed. Everyone needs to do it because it's important knowledge for you to have. But I very quickly realized that in making that comparison, number one, sometimes it was off-putting to some people, but that wasn't the main issue. The main issue was most people aren't going to use sex ed professionally. And it is really important to know about sustainability personally, from a mitigation perspective and from an adaptation perspective, and also all the intersectionalities. But professionally, as everyone else here has always said, like sustainability is part of people's professional lives. I don't really have a lot to add other than sustainability education is like sex ed. Maybe use that when you're talking to people. But just echoing really what Jenna had said, like there's an emotional argument as well. It's our future. And we need to know how to react. And also if things go wrong, and not even if things go wrong, things are going wrong. We need to understand adaptation. We need to understand restorative justice. We need to understand very, very basic sustainability principles that we're going to need to live in a happy and healthy and vitality-filled world.
Awesome. Thank you. And yeah, sustainability to sex ed, that'll make it sexy to have the conversation around sustainability, I guess. So that's a good one. So I'm just conscious of time here, and I do want to give a chance for a couple questions from the audience as well. But maybe you can give me a 1 second digest, or a 1 sentence, sorry, digest of what you would say as one of your biggest challenges that you've encountered in having these conversations on integrating sustainability in higher education. Again, just a quick snapshot, and maybe that can chew up some of the conversations from the wider group as well. So anybody want to offer to start on that one?
I can go first, to
Yeah,
set
go
a
ahead.
precedent of briefness. University governance is decentralized and it is complex and is difficult to understand, at least for me as a student. And when you don't understand something, it's hard to influence change.
Lovely, thank you. Other thoughts? Jaydn, go ahead.
Yeah, I think just for Dalhousie specifically, we have a College of Sustainability, and therefore that checks the curriculum box and doesn't make Dalhousie think that we need to implement it into all of the other disciplines, because the College of Sustainability does a great job of educating their students, but that leaves the rest of Dalhousie behind a little bit.
Amazing, great point. Jenna.
Yeah, speaking both about institutions and more broadly in our personal sustainability efforts, actions speak louder than words, and you can have the intention to create change, but if you don't take action, you don't actually take the steps to do what you say you're going to do, it's not going to amount to anything. So we need to actually be seeing the change that we are promising to make.
Wonderfully said. Anybody? Eric, go ahead.
I'm gonna kind of piggyback off of Kayleigh's point, but trying to reduce the complexity of sustainability when talking about it. If it's a room like this where a lot of people chose to be here on Saturday, different story. The common person that you meet, not going to have that same conversation. So that complexity is a big issue. And then trying to reach for what influences them. So understanding that helps you in kind of adapting to how that communication piece is going to be important to establish.
Perfect. Yeah, Keroles.
Yes, first of all, I'm going to apologize for breaking the rules, not going to be a bit longer than one sentence. But there are two things. Number one, what's not in the way is expertise. For example, at Concordia, there are over 200 professors that don't only span all the faculties, they span all the departments at Concordia that actually, whose research cover topics of sustainability. So the expertise exists. The passion from the students, from the staff, from the professors, from departments, from faculties exists. What's missing is institutional leadership. Because as complex as the institution is, there's a proper structure in place. And so one case study that I like to refer to is Laval University, who right now 95% of the students at Laval University have sustainability content and curriculum. And the way they did that is that their Senate in 2009, 13 years ago, voted that all undergraduate programs at Laval University are going to include a sustainability component. And the way they didn't just make a symbolic vote for a commitment, they also implemented a mechanism to get it done, which is essentially, they said, every program has to go an appraisal process every 10 years. And so the next time your program goes through the appraisal process, this is when you have to make the changes to incorporate sustainability if you need to. Like if the program doesn't already include sustainability, then you have to make changes. And this is your deadline. The next time you have to go through appraisal. So it's a 10-year process that over 10 years, every program would have gone through this process, and then everybody would have sustainability content. It doesn't happen overnight, but there's a commitment, there's a proper mechanism to get it done, and the university would provide resources to actually support the professors who want to do this. So if a department tomorrow says, okay, I want to have sustainability content in my curriculum, they're going to have the professors in their departments that have the expertise to do it. Not every professor will have the expertise, but you will have enough professors to do this. So it's a question of institutional leadership. That's what I think is often missing. It's not a question of passion. It's not a question of people understanding the importance. It's just having a systemic way to address this.
Cool, thank you. And last but not least, I'll turn it to Derek and Naoko for your thoughts.
Okay, I'll try my best with one sentence. I guess slowness and institutional change during these urgent times.
I'll answer with a question. How might we create the conditions for sustainable literacy, which might include how do we hold space for transdisciplinarity, multiple truths, uncertainty, complexity, and the ability to adapt.
Awesome. all fantastic responses. I do want to leave, at least for a few minutes, some opportunity for folks either online or in the room here. Are there any questions you had for the panelists that you'd want to have answered? So I saw one hand up down here. Go ahead. If you can actually just stand up so that the microphone can try to pick you up as well.
Well, I'll meet you soon, Eric, since I'm the Equinox Quarter of Waterloo campus. Basically, in November, we have our wellness month just coming up for eco-anxiety and stuff. So in the terms of like the panel people up here and for down here as well, with sustainability and eco-anxiety, how would you go about addressing it, especially with the university population and the circumstance we're at now? So again, how would you plan on addressing eco-anxiety? It's getting pretty bad.
Awesome. Yeah. Can everybody online hear that? Just how you would plan on addressing eco-anxiety as this comes up in conversations as well. Anybody want to take a stab as a first start on that? Jenna, go ahead.
I mean, well, I can give an example from Waterloo, and Matt will be familiar with it, but in the spring term, here we did attempt to pilot a sort of eco-anxiety workshop that created space for students as well as staff, really anyone in the university community, to open up about what they are feeling related to eco-anxiety. And if they didn't understand really what that term meant, to learn from other people in that space. So eco-anxiety is something that anybody can face. They can face it directly in comparison to the impacts of climate change. If you're thinking of like extreme weather or natural disasters, those are very isolated when they happen sometimes. And so you don't really feel the effects all the time, especially here in Canada. But with eco-anxiety, everyone can feel it at all times, in some cases. And so you need to create that space where people can come together to talk about what it is they're feeling, to create that sense of assurance from other people that it's okay, you're feeling this way, and there's something that we can do together to not resolve it, because I don't know if it will go away, but just to create that sense of comfort that you're not alone in experiencing that, especially with everything that's going on.
Eric, go ahead.
I'm going to try to answer that. It's mainly for Laurier students, but it's open to anybody in actuality if we work together between Matt and I. We have about 4 different opportunities. I mentioned the Hawk Fund earlier. That allows for students to build leadership opportunities within that. We did have a workshop that was run by Laurier students last year on eco-anxiety. Within our portfolio for this semester, I think what's kind of unique to this topic is that we've positioned an opportunity for students to get involved from an experiential side. So we have a student competition that's open to every university in Canada called Rein It In. It's a nonprofit based in Toronto that is working on stormwater resiliency. So that side of flood management, flood risk management, and eco-anxiety that comes from that. Students are free to join this, build a team together to learn about actual challenges that municipalities have with regards to flood resiliency. Last year with City of Ajax, this year City of London. So that's an opportunity that we've facilitated and sponsored. We've partnered as an office with our Thrive Week to allow for eco-anxiety to be open as a discussion for students to thrive within a wellness perspective. And then the last bit, I'm trying to remember now, is that we're trying to facilitate more options for students to learn about this from the field. So we've actually started to build a alumni speaker series, which is open to everybody. It's not just for Laurier students, but alumnus in the field of sustainability that are from Laurier to talk about how their work impacts directly with the industry, with the municipalities, with the government. We already have 30 speakers lined up for the next 5 years. We're really excited about launching this fall. And it will be an opportunity for them to have a direct access point to people to ask those questions. So it's directed to the 2 of you, but hopefully it's to share possibly insights that Matt's doing here.
Keroles.
Yeah, sorry, I hope I'm trying. I don't want to speak too much, but I think the first part is that we have to be honest. So one example that came up in the morning is thinking about racism, for example, as an example of sustainability issues. If you're a Black parent in the States, and obviously there's no shortage of racism here in Canada as well, you have to have this really impossible, heartbreaking conversation with your children about how to behave, right? And is that it's really difficult to have this conversation. I have to tell them that you can't behave like your white friends and walk around with toy guns, because there's a real chance that you're putting their lives in danger if you do that, right? So it's that honesty is really important for our survival, but not just when it comes to racism, but all other environmental issue and then sustainability issues. And at the same time, it's about empowerment. So at the end of that conversation, it tells them, as a parent, I'm doing everything I can to protect you. I'm doing everything I can to advocate for systemic change, to address the issues that are clearly not fair, they're not okay, right? And so when it comes to sustainability education, students feel anxious when they feel that they're on their own, that their institution is not on their side, right? That their institutions think about sustainability as a PR opportunity instead of doing their job and making sure that all their students are learning about those issues and how to contribute to them. So from an institution point of view, what I can do to address eco-anxiety is to do my job and just help the students learn and help the students get the tools that they need to have to contribute to solutions in their careers. And just empower people this way. And so, for example, with the referendum, what it did is that it gave the students a way, I think the reason it resonated with so many people within Concordia and outside is because it allowed people an opportunity to express themselves and speak and have a voice in the cause. And I'm really glad that Ceileigh and Jaydn are carrying this forward as well, because it's the entire point here is empowerment. Yeah. Thanks.
Any other thoughts from the panel? We don't have, everybody doesn't have to answer each question, but you had a question as well. Go ahead.
Yes. So we've talked a lot about how, for students, especially the administrative process is a bit opaque and not very accessible, and maybe there's some more administrative issues that staff and faculty have to deal with. But this question is directed towards the students, or the worst students not too long ago. Did you find that on the student side of things, you had issues with getting support? So I know in Concordia, you said that 89% of people voted in favor of the referendum. So I guess it wasn't so much of an issue. There's probably a lot of education that you had to do beforehand, so a lot of labor that you had to pour into this. And this question also goes to Dalhousie and Waterloo. How much work do you have to do to get students on board?
Any one of the panelists, so you can put up a hand as you have a thought.
I feel like Keroles would be the most appropriate person to go first.
Keroles, go for it. If you've got a response there, yeah.
Oh boy, honestly, not a ton of work. I think the reality is that we're at the point where the majority of people understand that there's an issue, and the anxiety is coming from being aware of the issues and not being able to know how to contribute. Sorry, I'm repeating myself quite a few times, but just having this vote and getting the 89%, I'm sure if this vote is put in every university across Canada, it will have an overwhelming support. And actually we broke down the vote per faculty, and every faculty, so there's business, there's engineering, there's arts and sciences, fine arts, had over 85 to 95%. This is where the vote is, nothing below. And so it's not difficult to get buy-in. What's important is to do the mobilization and allow people the opportunity to express themselves and give people the tools to be able to advocate for change. Because the reality is that the institution those massive institutions are just not nimble, right? And so they're really hard to there's a lot of inertia, let's say this way. A body at rest wants to stay at rest. And so it's going to take a large force to get it to move, and we have to be that large force. An engineering metaphor there for you.
Anybody else want to add anything to that?
Yeah, sort of just similar to what Keroles said. So far in my advocacy, everybody that I've spoken to has essentially been like, yeah, this is a great idea, including faculty. I was a little bit nervous to reach out to faculty because for some reason, it sort of feels like it's speaking against the institution when you're trying to get the student movement going. And I guess it maybe sort of is, but most faculty that I've spoken to so far have been in great support and essentially just been like, hey, whenever you need anything from me, let me know. I'm on your side. We want the students to be learning what students want to learn. And I think it's sort of easy to forget that when you're learning stuff that feels kind of irrelevant. But professors and faculty are there for us, and they do want us to learn what we want to learn, from my experience at least. As Keroles was saying, sort of getting the movement and actually putting it into action is definitely hard because it's a lot of work. And so why it hasn't happened yet is because it's a lot of work. But getting support for myself and like my peers has not been difficult to this point.
I thought I saw another hand up over here. Yeah, go ahead.
I was wondering if you have a quick anecdote that made you realize how important sustainability education is, like across all the disciplines.
So question on the, just repeating it for the folks on the phone. Is there an anecdote or maybe an inflection moment or something that really made you come to the aha moment of how important this really is? Anybody want to volunteer? Yeah, Eric.
My answer is actually related to my family. So when I started my family 10 years ago, I was working in clean tech, but as a strategist, so helping these environmental technology companies grow, but really helping companies make money ultimately. And I realized when I was starting my family that I don't know if I'm going to be proud of that when I tell my son or daughter, this is what I do, you know? And so in that moment, I realized I'm in the wrong place. I should be doing something else. I have a skill set that is applicable and useful, and I also have a currency or a reputation that I can get in there and do some good, but from the other side. And so I joined the other side, and that was my anecdote.
Jenna.
Interestingly, it came after I came to the university to start studying sustainability. Because I came in high school, originally I wanted to do something totally different, and I came and I thought environmental studies sounds pretty cool. I'm interested, I guess, a little bit in sustainability, but I'll figure out as I go. And it was in one of my first classes where it was my first opportunity to connect with people from all different places in the world, from all different backgrounds, hear from the faculty members, and recognize that sustainability affects everyone, as we've been talking about. Doesn't matter where you are coming from. And hearing all the stories of these different people in my program, in my faculty, and recognizing that, I think that it wasn't just one moment, but it was really around this period of time that became clear to me that it mattered. And so that's why I think it's also important to be allowing everybody to have these conversations about sustainability, not just those who are studying it specifically in school. Like it should be across the board in institutions. So we can all have those moments of realization that it does affect all of us.
Any other thoughts, pivotal moments? It's okay if not.
Do you have an answer to that?
Yeah, I'll jokingly say I was actually in computer science here at Waterloo when I first started. And it was a fantastic program with phenomenal stuff, but it just wasn't what I was interested in doing. But the catalyst for me to pivot to the sustainability side was really just, I don't think there was a specific moment, but it was just a series of things that you constantly read about. And the click for me was actually sort of already as I was starting to think about it, but it was on a conversation about thermodynamics. And if anybody's actually taken courses on thermodynamics, as you do some of the thermodynamic modeling and you look at it, like we are rapidly moving to a state that is very different than anything we've experienced as humanity. And once we start moving down that, we actually lose the ability to control it. We're still in this sort of zone where we have the ability to reduce, kind of reverse course on a lot of the damage that we're doing right now. So it was just a, one of those waking up moments for me that, this isn't a, if we get this wrong, we can go back and fix it, which of course, many of you know already. It really creates a lot of path dependencies for whatever's going to come next. So that was my moment. We have about 2 minutes left, so maybe I'll give you the final question. Go ahead.
Sure. So I'm in, the math faculty here, and I've discussed the SLR with some of my classmates, right? And decently common reaction is like, that's awesome, that's great. But I'm really busy doing my differential equations work. That's great, but it's not for me. So like, I think it's really easy to say that if this is something you're studying anyways, that yes, everybody should have to take one of these. But what would you say to somebody like, why should people care if this isn't something that's even remotely related to their wheelhouse at a first glance?
Turn that to the panel. Any thoughts or reflections?
Well, it's not directly speaking to that, but I do grapple with that as well. As you know, we ask our students to do lots of calculations, and I think it takes faculty to be very creative in setting certain things up. So if this is a quick example I could just think about, but if I want my students, I teach a course in carbon capture and conversion and technical course, but if I want them to do some calculation, would I be able to set it up so that, okay, what would it take for this technology to make money, and how much carbon tax would we need? And so in just kind of shifting that questioning allows them to hopefully create that curiosity to go, oh yes, carbon tax. What was that about? And we do touch in that in class, but sort of make it so that it is integral to something that we're doing that is just kind of expanding. And it's easier said than done. And I'll be happy to talk to others who might want to have these kind of conversations. Thank you.
Keroles.
I could jump in a little bit. So generally speaking, it feels that, okay, there are disciplines where it's clear what is like, for example, business. They have to talk about ethics, and you have to talk about how business can contribute to different solutions. And politicians need to learn about how environmental policy work or sustainability related policy needs to work. So there's clear ways. Now there are also other programs where there are elective courses. So you can always designate one of those elective courses to be a sustainability course, and you have a list of different sustainability courses, and then students can choose one of them. So it's not intended to be an additional course load. It's just intended to redesign the existing curriculum so that some of it can cover sustainability without adding extra work for students. The other part is that I'm not in math programs. Forgive me if I'm making assumptions here, but there's a fair bit of mathematics and programming that has to go into climate modeling, for example, to understand how much carbon budget we still have, the kind of emissions that we need to calculate their impact on. And these kind of things we can use mathematicians to contribute to develop those models and make sure they're accurate and make sure that we understand the different impacts. Right, so there's a lot of different things that has to go into these things, and so training mathematicians to be able to have an appreciation for climate impacts will directly help us improve climate models and be able to understand what has impact on what. Right, and at the end of the day, we need to trust professors that they have the right expertise for each program. So none of the advocacy is trying to say that I know what you need to be teaching, and so I'm telling you what course you need to put together, and you need to do that. I think that's too much to ask students to do. But this is the professors are the experts of their own field. What's needed is the institutional mandate and resources from the institution and a credible mechanism, and then you trust the professor to say, you find the best way to integrate sustainability component for your programs that's the most relevant for your students, the most relevant for your discipline. There's just a mandate, and here's the resources for you to be able to get it. And that's the mechanism, that's the deadlines, that's the timelines that you need to have. But beyond that, you trust the experts.
May I make a very quick point?
Yep.
Okay, so Derek already alluded to this earlier, but one of the big critiques to our current education system is how it educates us in silos. And maybe someone is doing pure math right now, and that's what they're studying, or maybe they're studying actuarial science is very related to climate action, another like computer science or something that's very siloed and doesn't seem to have a lot of climate related applications. They're not going to continue working and existing in the siloed world of academia forever. One day they're going to work, and multidisciplinarity is a big part of the workforce. And again, also going back to my sex ed comment, Sustainability literacy is that said, right? You need to know it professionally, but you also need to know it personally. Who here knows how Waterloo's weather is going to change in the next 20 years? Who other than me, because I had to learn about it for my job, has a good understanding of that? I think that's something that we should all understand. Our food relies on it, where we live relies on it, our infrastructure relies on it. Maybe you guys won't all be in Waterloo in 20 years, but I think we're all gonna be impacted by climate change. Most of us, it will be deeply integrated into our professional lives, but for all of us, as Jenna said, and as other people have said, it's gonna affect us all personally.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, and I'll close off the panel with just a comment on that, and I think I'm doing one of the discussions this afternoon, so I'd love to pick up this thread, but I think the idea is when we recognize the enormity of the sustainability challenges we face, one of the things that strikes us is this is going to affect everybody in different ways. Every company is going to have a response to it. And when we think about some of the language that we're finally starting to use on things like an all of government approach, an all of institution approach, and all of company approach to dealing with sustainability challenges, it starts like regardless of what your disciplinary training is, how you apply that in the real world is going to intersect with some of these challenges. And so I love the word that you said at first glance. And I think it's when you take the second, third, and fourth glance that you start saying, I might not need it today, but I'm probably going to need it tomorrow and in the future as all of these issues continue coming to the forefront. So anyway, thank you so much for our panels. I think we're at time, is that right? Okay, so thank you so much for our panel. For joining us on a Saturday morning, sharing your experiences and expertise on this topic. Really appreciate your time, and best of luck in all of your institutional journeys as well, and look forward to keeping in touch.
Thank you for organizing. Thank you for having us.
Great, thank you all for participating. So for those both in person and online, it's time for our final breakout room. That says we need about 5 minutes to set everything up and set everything up online. So we just offer you to take 5 minutes for yourself. If you want to chat with people, maybe chat about something insightful that you thought was neat from the panel. But we'll be catching up very soon. Getting on to the next thing. Thank you.